When you shift it diagonally, then you are going to be aligned. But if you shift it sideways, then you create compression in your side flexors, and you don't want this. Hello guys, in this video I want to talk about the top mistakes that most beginners and advanced athletes are doing when they first want to learn the one-arm handstand. The first mistake that I see is a lack of shoulder push. Most people, when they first make the transition from the regular handstand to the one-arm handstand, they underestimate the amount of shoulder push that is required in order to hold the one-arm handstand, because it's very different to the regular handstand. And the shoulder push is twice as much, but it's also different, because when you go to the one-arm handstand, you always need to focus on pushing with the inside of your shoulder, so with this part right here. And this part is the part where you need to have the most tension. And if you do it like this, then you are also going to have the best weight placement that you need for the one-arm handstand and in order to perform it correctly. Let's go to the next mistake. Some people don't work on their shoulder mobility, and the shoulder mobility is something extremely important, because I've never seen someone who already started to practice the regular handstand or the one-arm handstand while having the perfect shoulder mobility right away without practicing it. Most people start to practice without having the best range of motion in the shoulders, because they don't manage to get the shoulder in a 180-degree angle. They just manage to get it into an angle like this, and this is not enough to perform a clean one-arm handstand. So you need to get the shoulder completely above your head, and this requires some mobility work, some really specific work, and usually it takes a few months to get the full range of motion that you need for the one-arm handstand. Let's go to the next mistake. Some people don't adjust the training to their level. Some people are always working inside of their comfort zone, so they are stuck at working on weight shifts, for example. That's something that I can see quite often. They are always working on the things that they can do quite well, but they don't push themselves outside of the zone where they feel competent and confident in. And then there's the other type of people that are mainly working outside of their comfort zone. So they are constantly lifting up the arm in the one-arm handstand without having the foundation. So you need to have the right balance, and different people need to focus on different things. So I can tell you to focus more on practicing outside of your abilities, and I can also not tell you to practice more inside of your abilities, because this answer can only be said specifically to your current situation. So I can't say something for everyone. This is something that you need to understand individually. So you need to have the right balance. Usually it's 50-50. So you're working on the foundation and on your working sets. These are the things that are inside of your capabilities, and then you are also working on new transitions, new positions, and everything that is outside of your reach. So it's a balance of training inside of your capabilities and outside of your capabilities. And when you do it like this, you also have the most motivation, because motivation is always there when you are reaching for something new that you can't do right now. So if you are reaching for something where you don't have competence in, and when you are still working on the things where you are competent in, because when you are still working on the things where you have competence, then you are also telling yourself that you can do something, and this is also pushing your motivation. And you also need to fall in love with the process, because the one-arm handstand is something that can be extremely repetitive, especially if you gain some competence, because once you gain competence, everything also starts to become boring. That's why you need to fall in love with the boring process. The next mistake is that some people, they shift the hips sideways instead of diagonally, because it's the intuitive way to shift the hips sideways instead of diagonally. But you need to train yourself to keep the hip in a diagonally shifted way. When you shift it diagonally, then you are going to be aligned. But if you shift it sideways, then you create compression in your side flexors, and you don't want this, because it's not going to be efficient. You want to be as efficient in the one-arm handstand as possible, and that's why you should train yourself to shift the hip in the right way. And it's also the same way as when we stand on one foot, because when we stand on one foot, we also shift our hips diagonally. And if you want to have more details about this part, because it's not the easiest thing to understand, then let me know, and I will make a video where I talk about it in depth. So let's go to the next mistake. The next mistake is that some people are constantly changing their approach to training, or they are also changing the techniques that they are doing. They may go into the training with the mindset of, I will try this out for a certain period of time, for example 3 weeks, and then they see that it doesn't work the way that they wanted it to work, and then they change it because they think it's not the best way. You need to understand that the one-arm handstand is a skill that takes a lot of time, and you need to be consistent with a specific type of practice in order to see if it works, because you are usually not seeing results after a few weeks. You are usually seeing results after some months of practice. And of course, when you don't know which way is the right way, it completely makes sense that you are trying out a lot of different things, but you should rather stick to one thing and see if it works, and then you should change your approach. But you shouldn't go for one approach for a few weeks and then change it and then change it again, because it's not going to lead in a certain direction, because you need to stick with something. Because if you're constantly changing everything, then you're not giving your body the chance to get used to a certain style of training or to a certain position. And you need to be really specific, and you also need to repeat the same things over and over again. And when you don't do it like this, then you are just confusing your body, and your body is not going to learn the thing in the most efficient way because you are not clear with your intention. And if you don't know the best approach to practicing the one-arm handstand, then you can also contact me on Instagram and I will reply to you personally. So let's go to the next mistake. You may not have the best focus in your training, because if you are reaching out for a lot of different skills like muscle up, planche, front lever, one-arm handstand, or anything else at the same time, then you are just overloading your nervous system. So you need to have a clear focus on the things that you want to reach. And I'm not telling you that you can only be good in one specific skill, but you should focus on one specific skill at a time, and then you can change your focus to something else. So you should first go all in with one skill, and once you have reached the skill and once you have fully understood how to execute the skill, that's when you can change your focus to something else. But you should always keep the focus on 1 to 3 skills at a time, and I wouldn't recommend you to practice more than 3 skills at a time. And you should also make a list of your priorities, and then you can see which thing is at the top of your priority list. Then you can go all in with this one skill, and once you have reached it after 1 or 2 years, for example, that's when you can change your focus to something else. Then you should take a look at the most impactful exercises that are going to help you to reach this goal, and then you should follow these exercises in order to get there. And you shouldn't do too much different exercises because you don't want to overload your nervous system. You always want to send your body a clear signal. The next mistake is something similar to training inside or outside of your comfort zone. It's a thing about balance, because some people are mainly focusing on structuring their training extremely clear, and there's nothing bad about this, but you also need to listen to your body, and you also need to adjust your training to your body to a certain extent. And having a clear structure is really great, but you shouldn't do it too much. And the other type of people are the ones that are only doing the free approach. And these people are usually the ones that are always training outside of the comfort zone. And both people are not making the best progress that they can make. So you need to find the balance between structuring your training and having a free approach that is based on the feeling of your body. You need to have a clear structure in the beginning, especially in the beginning. If you don't know your body that well, it can be extremely helpful to have a clear structure. But once you evolve to a higher level, that's when you should incorporate more of the feeling-based structure. It's also something where I can't tell you to do more of this or more of this, because it's also something that needs to be analyzed individually for each person. The last mistake is having a lack of consistency. And this is something that can happen quite often, because the one-arm handstand is a skill that can be really boring, because in order to learn the one-arm handstand, you need to repeat the same things over and over again. And this can be quite boring. So you need to fall in love with the process because there's no other way. And in the beginning, in the first 2 weeks, for example, it can be extremely exciting to practice the one-arm handstand because it's something new and you don't have experience and you don't have competence in this area. But once you gain some competence, then it's going to get quite boring. So you need to be prepared for this, because once you gain competence in a certain area, that's also the time when the skill becomes boring to practice. And this is actually the point that is going to separate a winner from someone who is not going to reach the things that he wants. Because a winner has the attitude of still continuing even if it gets boring. But someone else who is not going to reach the things that he wants usually don't reach the things because he is not consistent with one approach. So you need to enjoy each step of the journey, because when you do it like this, then your training is going to be the most productive that it can be. So that's it for the video. And if you have some questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. And if you want personal guidance, you can DM me on Instagram. The link is in the description. And I'll see you in the next video.